Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. Today, we're tackling a theme chosen by my patrons, and they've selected one that brings to bear the might of ancient deities. It's safe to say that just about everyone who plays Yu-Gi-Oh! Is familiar with the Egyptian gods, and from there, it's not too far of a stretch to know about how GX remixed those cards into the sacred beasts. But there's even another degree of separation, another trio of gods that wield overwhelming power. While only having the Divine Attribute, Divine Beast typing in the anime, the Aesir are a trio of synchro monsters from 5Ds that challenge the power of the Signer dragons themselves, and that's after the massive power boosts on the Signer's side of the equation. So today's episode is dedicated to covering these three paragons of warfare, and I suppose we can also talk about the Nordic cards that make up the support base for the theme. So sharpen your axes and ready your runes, cause it's time for Nordics Explained. Today's episode is possible thanks to viewers like you, as well as my patrons. If you like what I do here, I would super appreciate it if you'd subscribe to help us reach another wonderful milestone video. And if you want to support me directly while getting some awesome benefits, check out the link to my Patreon in the description below. So what's the deal with Nordics? Well, it's hard to bundle them all into one category, and that's by design. While many of our main deck monsters share the Nordic title, they're also divided into 4 sub-themes. The Nordic Alfar, a series of little sprites, the Nordic Ascendant, angels and valkyries, Nordic Beasts, a series of creatures from goats to horses, and a pile of other miscellaneous Nordics, who are based on concepts and characters that don't quite fit into the previous 3. But why do this? Well, it all comes down to which Aesir synchros you want to focus on. While all of them require 2 or more generic non-tuners, they also need a specific kind of tuner. A Nordic Ascendant for Odin, Nordic Alfar for Loki, and Nordic Beasts for Thor. This was pretty useful for the members of Team Ragnarok, as each one of them got to focus their decks on a particular Aesir. But if you want to play them all as one big deck, you're gonna need to think twice about the cards you run so you don't end up with a synchro you aren't looking for. However, because of this, we can cover each of those groups one at a time to get a handle on what they aim to do. First up, let's cover the Nordic Alfar. They're mostly spellcaster monsters, but otherwise don't really have any unifying properties other than being little color blobs that have various levels of mischievousness. And while our first one seems to be set to 0 mischief, it is the only one to break the typing convention here. Dverg, the Nordic Alfar, is a level 1 Earth Warrior monster with 100 attack and 1000 defense, and after you normal summon this card, you can normal summon 1 Nordic monster during your main phase this turn, in addition to your normal summoner set, which you can only gain once per turn. If this face-up card on the field is sent to the grave, you can target a Nordic Relic card in your grave and add that target to your hand. The Nordic Relics are a series of spell and trap cards that have a variety of effects, so having a way to recycle those while using Dverg as synchro or link material is going to be super important. And you'll be in a good position to do that thanks to that extra normal summon. The best part is that this can be used with any Nordic, so because this isn't a tuner, it's got a solid spot in the deck list no matter what you're aiming to do, whether you're going for one specific Aesir or all 3. Even if it does Dverg from the status quo. Mara of the Nordic Alfar is a level 2 Dark Tuner monster with 1000 attack and 500 defense, and when using this card as synchro material, the other synchro materials must be 2 Nordic monsters in your hand. Notably, this doesn't just have to make on-theme synchro monsters, just that you have to use on-themed monsters from your hand as material. Though, because it's a Nordic Alfar, the only Aesir you'll be making with this is Loki. However, this does make it one of the easiest to make as long as you can assemble the materials in your hand, as you won't have to worry about getting them onto the field. All you gotta do is put more of them in your hand. Or should I say, Mara them. Alvis of the Nordic Alfar is a level 4 monster with 1500 attack and 1000 defense, and if only this card is banished by the effect of a Nordic Link monster, you can send to the graveyard 1 Nordic monster you control and 2 Nordic monsters from your deck whose total levels equal 10, then special summon an Aesir monster from your extra deck. And if any number of Aesir monsters in your possession are sent to your grave by your opponent's card, you can banish this card from your grave to special summon an Aesir monster from your extra deck with a different name from the cards in your grave. Now, we only have the 1 Nordic Link monster to work with here, but it is very powerful, effectively making any of the Aesir by itself, and Alvis helps make that happen without spending a million cards to do so, though it is hard to show that without bringing in the other card as context. so we're just gonna skip ahead a bit. Gullveig of the Nordic Ascendant is a Link 1 light fairy monster with 800 attack, requiring a level 5 or lower Nordic monster as material. If this card is Link summoned, you can banish up to 3 cards from your hand and or field, and if you do, special summon that many Nordic monsters from your deck in defense position. Also, for the rest of this turn, you can't special summon monsters except Aesir monsters, nor normal summon or set any monsters, presumably to keep you from using all of them as tribute fodder. And while this card points to an Aesir monster, your opponent cannot target that monster with card effects. Also, monsters your opponent controls can't target this card for attacks. So for general use, you dump 3 cards to get 3 monsters. That's the minimum number needed to make one of your Aesir after all. So all you have to do is perform the synchro summon from there and boom, there you go. But that does cost a boatload of cards to pull off. You can skimp on 1 card by banishing Gullveig themselves, but then you don't get the protection the Link monster provides. Alvis, however, lets you cheat that. Instead of banishing 3 cards, just have Gullveig banish Alvis. Then, on a new chain, once you have that new Nordic monster, use Alvis's effect to send the newly obtained Nordic monster to the graveyard and 2 more complementary ones from the deck, totaling up to level 10. And now, you've got a much more cost-efficient Aesir on your hand. But even that doesn't come without a few drawbacks. One of the iconic effects of all 3 Aesir is that during the end phase, if they were destroyed, they come right back, along with a bonus effect. But Aesir summoned by Alvis's effect aren't properly special summoned, so that effect is entirely shut off. So you best hope that Gullveig's protection keeps it around for a long, long time, because it would be really bad to miss with Alvis. Yosalf of the Nordic Alfar is a level 4 light monster with 1400 attack and 1200 defense, and when this card is normal summoned, you can target 1 face-up monster you control, except this card, to special summon a Nordic monster from your hand with a level less than or equal to that face-up monster's level. This one is well, it seems bad to have so little to say about this card after the veritable essay I said in the last part, but I'm not really fond of it. It only triggers on normal summon, so you have to keep that available for it, but only works after you set up your board since you need another target, so you have to have already done the work there, and you need to keep a suitable monster in hand for the effect to boot. Even before power creep set in, I can't imagine this felt good to play, so maybe it's for the best we found better options. And, the funny thing is that it's kind of counterintuitive when it comes to summoning Loki. Mara wants those materials to stay in the hand. Being able to work in multiple sections is one thing, but this is just sabotage! Svardolf of the Nordic Alfar is a level 5 tuner monster with 1400 attack and 1600 defense, and when this card is normal summoned, you can target a Nordic monster in your grave and add that target to your hand. A normal summon that's going to require a tribute. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this works pretty good with Diverg. You've got the body on board and you have the extra normal summon, so you send the Diverg to grave to get back a relic, and you get the Diverg back as part of Svardolf's effect too. But it's such a specific payoff for such a narrow buyback that I can't, in good conscience, recommend it when we have so many other options available. You can't even keep this in hand to use as material with Mara, because it's a tuner! At that point, you're going way too far into the card pool. Next up, we have the Nordic Ascendants. These are all fairy types and are of the smallest number of the core 3 in terms of monster count, even counting the Link monster from last section. Other than that, though, they don't really have anything in common. Mimir of the Nordic Ascendant is a level 2 dark monster with 600 attack and 0 defense, and once per turn at the start of your standby phase, if you control a Nordic monster and this card is in the grave, you can send a spell card from your hand to the grave to special summon this card. So in a pinch, you can get back 2 non-tuner levels to work with. It's not the worst card in the world, it's probably one of the best you can send to the graveyard with Gullveig or Alvis, because at least it does something. But I wouldn't rely on it too much considering how slow and costly it is. Is Mimir coming back from the grave flavorful? You bet it is. Same with trading spells to do so, but unless this Mimir will also give you important advice and friendly quips, I don't want to mess with it. I wonder how many God of War jokes I'm good for this episode before the bit gets stale. Valkyrie of the Nordic Ascendant is a level 2 light tuner monster with 400 attack and 800 defense, and is not treated as a Valkyrie card. That's for Mr. Von Schroeder to handle. Unsubtle plug for Valkyrie Explained. When this card is normal summoned, if your opponent controls a monster and you control no other cards, you can banish 2 Nordic monsters from your hand to special summon 2 Einherjar tokens in defense position, which are level 4 Earth Warrior monsters with 1000 attack and defense. This is super brutal for you. Like, it's not checking to see if you have other monsters, it's checking to see if you have no other cards on your board. That means no back row to back you up. Now granted, this does give you all the material you need to make Odin, but it's not exactly free since you have to banish the Nordics from hand to make it happen. Heck, they aren't even Nordic cards themselves, so they don't work with any of our on-theme effects. Once again, a huge flavor win here, but couldn't we have at least pulled from the grave if that's the case? If we take the spirits of these great warriors before they've even seen combat, I feel like that's missing the whole point. Vanadis of the Nordic Ascendant is a level 4 Dark Tuner monster with 1200 attack and 400 defense, and for a Synchro Summon, you can substitute this card for any one Nordic Tuner. If this card is used as Synchro Material, all other Synchro Materials must be Nordic monsters. And once per turn, you can send a Nordic monster from your deck to the grave, so that this card's level becomes the level of the sent monster until the end of the turn. Sweet! Level modulation is always a great addition to a synchro-based theme to help smooth over those levels, and even better if it sets up any grave effects. But the real draw is that first effect. The idea that each Aesir needs a specific tuner goes out the window when Vanadis is around, as this can be used to cover for any of those tuner requirements. It makes sense that it's one of Odin's crew that can get away with cheating the rules like that. Always bending the rules, that guy. You get a little bit of cosmic wisdom and all of a sudden the universe is putty in your hands, huh? Okay, dude. With the Ascendants behind us, let's see what the Nordic Beasts have to offer. This time, Beast is the prevailing monster type, and while I wouldn't say they have a unifying concept, they are a lot more focused than the previous groups, having a lot of effects that get Nordics onto the board. Up to bat first is Nordic Beast Gullinbursty, a level 3 light tuner monster with 300 attack and 100 defense, and for a Synchro Summon, you can substitute this card for any one Nordic tuner. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can special summon a Nordic monster from your hand. Also, you can target one Nordic monster in your grave except a copy of this card, and add it to your hand. Little disjointed. Would be more helpful if you put the Nordic in hand before the summon trigger. But hey, that's Nordics, the jank is expected. Though I can't quite make excuses for it here, because this is more modern Legacy support. It also makes Vanadis a lot less special, thus undermining my analysis of the card and the sub-theme, but maybe there's something in mythology I'm not aware of involving the Golden Boar. Hey, I can't know everything here, okay? Tangyoster of the Nordic Beasts is a level 3 Earth Beast monster with 800 attack and 1100 defense, and when a monster you control is destroyed by battle and sent to the grave, you can special summon this card from your hand. Once per turn, when this defense position card on the field is changed to phase of attack position, you can special summon a Nordic Beast monster from your deck in defense position. Hey, that's pretty cool! Tangyoster jumps in to replace a fallen comrade, and if it survives till your next turn, they get another buddy. Though only from this sub-theme, you can't reach out to the Alfars or Ascendants. This pairs very nicely with Gullinbursty, as long as you have a level 4 Nordic non-tuner in your graveyard. You can use Tangyoster to summon Gullin, Gullin gets you the level 4, normal summon it, and now you can summon any Aesir. That's the kind of combo I expect from a coordinated team. And they must have some great health benefits to keep up that morale too. I mean, look how clean those goats' teeth are. It's actually a little disturbing. Tangrisnir of the Nordic Beast is a level 3 Earth monster with 1200 attack and 800 defense, and if this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the grave, special summon 2 Nordic Beast tokens, which are each level 3 Earth Beast monsters with 0 attack and defense. Hey, more token generation, hard to be mad about that. Combine that with Tangyoster and you can get a lot of bodies onto the board for blocking, sinking, or anything else you need bodies for. And hey, bonus, those tokens are actually on theme, Valkyrie! Garmr of the Nordic Beasts is a level 4 Dark monster with 800 attack and 1900 defense, and if this card battles a level 4 or lower monster after damage calculation, return that monster to the hand. So what we have here is a Wall of Illusions with slightly more defense, but only hits tiny monsters. Well, I mean, striking out by itself isn't really out of character for it. It's not very helpful in the grand scheme of things, even in its own right, and doesn't do much to help advance the theme's game plan. A bit of a lone wolf, you could say. Guldifax of the Nordic Beasts is a level 4 light tuner monster with 1600 attack and 1000 defense, and if your opponent controls a synchro monster and you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. So this is pretty vanilla. It can at least summon itself under certain conditions, but as the extra deck has expanded, it's become more and more situational. So it's not high on the priority list in modern games, but for the time, Guldifax was actually splashed in quite a few decks. Now, it doesn't hold the distinction of being one of the earliest level 4 tuner monsters. The designers were just starting to let up on the leash for that particular design decision during this era, but they were still usually highly archetypal or had some drawback. Guldifax, though slim, came with an upside, making it a great target for Summoner Monk to make level 8 synchros, and if you hard drew it, there was a chance it was a free summon anyway. Far more useful than its contemporaries. It really is out here showing people the meaning of haste, huh? That does it for the 3 pillars of the Nordics. Now it's time for the random miscreants that make up the rest of our team. Nordic Smith Ivaldi is a level 4 Earth Warrior monster with 1500 attack and 700 defense, and if you control an Aesir or Nordic monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. And if this card is normal or special summoned, you can add a Nordic Relic card from your deck to your hand. Wow, that's unreasonably useful, a far cry better than most of the cards we've talked about already. It's 4 levels worth of non-tuner material, is a free summon, and you get to pick any relic out of your deck? That's really going to help get you gassed up, so put that reinforcement of the army in your deck, get that card draw loaded up, whatever it takes to get this into rotation, since it's so good at hammering out the deck's problems. Tear of the Nordic Champions is a level 4 light warrior monster with 2000 attack and defense, and your opponent's monsters can't target Nordic monsters for attacks, except Tear of the Nordic Champions. And if there is no other Nordic monster on the field, destroy this card. See, there's the drawback I was waiting for. You can't have a 2000 attack and defense normal summonable monster without it having some kind of heinous detriment, and Tears just so happens to be crippling abandonment issues. It's got a great stat line, but doesn't really do anything for the deck other than warding off attacks. And really, any decent special summoned monster still trounces this, so I think I'm going to skip it for any of my builds. Besides, I can't stand a tearful reunion. Jormungandr the Nordic Serpent is a level 8 Dark Dragon monster with 3000 attack and defense that can't be normal summoned or set. If an Aesir monster is on the field, you can special summon this card from your hand to your opponent's side of the field in defense position. If an Aesir monster is not on the field, destroy this card. If this face-up defense position card you control is changed to face-up attack position, take 3000 damage, and this effect can only be used once while this card is face-up on the field. So you give your opponent a big snake, but if they want to hit you with it, they need to be ready to take 3000 to the dome first. A little bit of snake for me, and a little bit of snake for thee kind of situation. But there is kind of a debacle here. This can only exist while an Aesir is on the board, and most of the Aesir stats outclass Jormungandr across the board, so why would you even want to put this into attack position? Well, that's because we're only looking at one half of the puzzle. To fully get what we're going for here, we'll need to check out Fenrir the Nordic Wolf, a level 10 Dark Beast monster with 4000 attack and defense, and it also can't be normal summoned or set. During your main phase 2, if an Aesir monster is on the field, you can special summon this card from your hand to your opponent's side of the field in defense position. And if an Aesir monster is not on the field, destroy this card. At the start of your battle phase, change all defense position monsters you control to face-up attack position, and both players take any battle damage involving this card. So you get your opponent both cards, Jormungandr and Fenrir. Then, during their battle phase, they're both shifted to attack position thanks to Fenrir's mandatory effect. This will trigger Jormungandr, forcing your opponent to take 3000 damage. And now they have 7000 damage worth of attack points pointed at your face. Though admittedly, 4k of that is going to be dealt to both players, so it's hard to say who's going to come out on top. Especially if you can make the most of Fenrir's damage duplicating effect. It's kind of like an anti-Makonko in that sense. But all of that is kind of a moot point, because we gave our opponent 2 monsters that have no restrictions on their usage. So they can just make a link 2 they wouldn't be able to otherwise and avoid the entire drawback. That's really unfortunate. A cool concept waylaid by the creep of power once again. Shame. Real shame. Alright, that does it for all of our other monsters. Now it's time to bring in the pinnacle of our deck's might, the Aesir! They're all level 10 synchro monsters, each needing a tuner from one of the core 3 groups of Nordics and 2 or more non-tuner material. First up is Loki, Lord of the Aesir, a dark spellcaster monster with 3300 attack and 3000 defense, requiring a Nordic Alfar tuner monster and 2 or more non-tuner monsters as material. Once per turn, when your opponent activates a spell or trap card during your battle phase, as a quick effect, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. And once per turn, during the end phase, if this face-up card you controlled was destroyed by your opponent's card and sent to the grave this turn, you can banish a Nordic Alfar tuner from your grave to special summon this card. And when summoned this way, you can target one trap card in your graveyard and add that target to your hand. So this is where I have to drop the hype and admit that the Aesir are, despite their advertising campaign, not unstoppable forces of nature. Though that is kind of the realization you have to make about all the god cards. By themselves, they're not super special. Admittedly, Loki is probably the worst of all of these, but we aren't getting much better from here. I can't imagine what it must have been like when these cards first dropped to commit all the resources to playing these, only to find out that it's effectively worse than the ancient Gear Freeze. At least those shut off spell and trap activations anytime they attacked. Loki only gets one negate, so if they have a second piece of interaction, you're donezo. Like, it might have been better if you could use the negate during both players' turns, because Ancient Gears only get that freeze when they attack, but nope, you only get protection when you're the turn player. The revival effect is where a lot of the power is centralized in Loki, because you can get some pretty good trap cards back with it, but it still has aged like milk. You only get the benefit when you revive it, not on its destruction, so your benefit is very much delayed. Like, you get to grab a trap card during the end phase, but it goes into your hand, meaning you have to wait a whole turn cycle to actually be able to set it, at which point you won't even be able to use it until you get to your opponent's turn. On top of that, destruction removal isn't always the majority like it used to be. There's bouncing, banishing, even sending to the grave are all things that can happen that mess up your loop. Thankfully, there's no restriction on special summoning this card from the grave, so traditional revival effects will work here and set it back on the right track. Though it can only get its revival effect when summoned using its own effect, so don't think you're getting any extra value out of that. Overall, even if you can make this with a one-card combo, it's severely outclassed. Getting added to this game might in fact be the greatest trick that Loki ever pulled on the player base. Odin, Father of the Aesir, is a light fairy monster with 4000 attack and 3500 defense, requiring a Nordic Ascendant tuner monster and 2 or more non-tuner monsters as material. Once per turn, you can make this card be unaffected by spell and trap effects until the end of this turn. And once per turn, during the end phase, if this face-up card you controlled was destroyed by your opponent's card and sent to the graveyard this turn, you can banish one Nordic Ascendant tuner monster from your graveyard to special summon this card. And when summoned this way, you can draw a card. This one's a bit of a better sell than Loki. At least if you draw a hand trap, you can make immediate use of it. It's also got a supremely larger attack stat, and instead of having to make sure you have a good trap card in grave, you can just draw a card, easy as that. But its effect is laughable. It's not unaffected by spell and trap cards, it has an activated spell speed 1 effect that makes him unaffected by spell and trap effects. Granted, once it gets going, it works just fine, but it's only during your own turn that it lasts. And then, not even your whole turn. You're wide open during your draw and standby phases, and there's still that little bit of time at the start of main phase 1 before you activate the effect. So if they have spell speed 2 interaction and, you know, that's what trap cards are supposed to do, well, you're out of luck. Let's hope that interaction was a destruction removal, because otherwise, All Father isn't going to be much of an all bother. Thor, Lord of the Aesir, is an Earth Beast Warrior monster with 3500 attack and 2800 defense, requiring a Nordic Beast tuner monster and 2 or more non-tuner monsters as material. Once per turn, you can negate the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls until the end of this turn. And once per turn during the end phase, if this face-up card you control was destroyed by your opponent's card and sent to the grave this turn, you can banish one Nordic Beast tuner from your graveyard to special summon this card. And if summoned this way, inflict 800 damage to your opponent. Now this has some merit to it. 3500 is a pretty solid attack stat, and negating the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent controls for the turn can really help you break boards like nobody's business. But it probably has the worst of the revival effects, to be sure. A Loki can grab back some of the game's most explosive and devastating cards, Odin draws deep into his ancient knowledge to add to your card economy, and Thor has a binder full of Ukazis and can't wait to show you. Alright, that does it for the monsters. Now it's time for the spells and traps. GoldenNova is a normal spell card that targets an Aesir monster that you control and gives control of that monster to your opponent. And during your opponent's next end phase, destroy that monster, and if you do, banish all cards your opponent controls. Okay, so that seems pretty killer. Heck, the Sacred Beast would follow this card's example with the Archetypes retrain to a degree. Unfortunately, for us, there are several reasons why this card is just not your friend. Number one, they get a whole turn with your huge monster to retaliate against you. And like we've seen, they're pretty big. Number two, even if you have a plan to keep them from attacking you, they can still use it for other things. Fuel a link summon, pay a tribute cost, all kind of stuff. Any of which keeps GoldenNova from resolving correctly. Third, you don't trigger the Aesir's self-revive, because they have to be destroyed while you control them. And guess what happens when you give control over to your opponent? So you don't even get to bring back a huge beater to take advantage of their now empty field. But the last thing, the one thing that really gets my goat, it shows Odin and the art, and they're the worst card to use for this effect. It's the one that gains spell and trap immunity. If your opponent gets this, they can just activate Odin's protection. And now, it can't be destroyed by spell effects, so they get to keep their big doofus and their board. Who printed this? Nordic Relic Hlidskjalf is a normal spell card that special summons a Nordic monster from your deck, but you can't special summon monsters from the extra deck except Aesir monsters while that monster is face up on the field. You can banish this card from your grave to add a Nordic monster from your deck to your hand, then shuffle a card from your hand into the deck. You can only use one effect of this card per turn, and only once per turn. That's kinda goofy. If you need just one more card to make your Aesir summon work, this card has you covered. And it even gets the right Nordic unit into your hand, helping you to ensure you have Alvis to combo with Gullveig. Though, that brings up my big qualm with this card, the summon restriction. Being limited to Aesir summons out of the extra deck seems reasonable, but we actually have a fourth member that lives in the extra deck. Gullveig, a Nordic Ascendant monster, notably not an Aesir. And that kills the combo line pretty succinctly. Like, until I caught it, I thought you could summon Ivaldi, get Hilid, then use that card to summon out Alvis. Then you link Ivaldi into Gullveig, banishing the Alvis, and there you go. But because Gullveig isn't an Aesir, it's stuck in your extra deck until you can clear the monster you summoned with this card. In fact, it might be better to not even activate the in-hand effect of Hlid, but instead find a way to discard it so you can put Alvis into your hand so you can still access Gullveig. I know I'm getting really hung up on using these specific monsters, but you've seen the video up to this point. We're not exactly dealing with a broad roster of all-stars. We have to be very selective here. March Towards Ragnarok is a quick play spell card that targets an Aesir monster you control, and until the end of this turn, its effects are negated. Also, that face-up monster is unaffected by the effects of other spell and trap cards. Wow, that's wild. It's almost like that's just Odin's effect. Which I guess is why they put Thor on the art, so, you know, you can benefit from it. The cool thing is, once you've used the monster effect negation ability, Thor is basically a vanilla anyway, so getting rid of its effects isn't really a downside. So, congrats, your souped-up Forbidden Lance gets a solid okay, but it's a long way from Ragnarok in it. Nordic Relic Dropnir is an equipped spell card that can only be equipped to Aesir or Nordic monsters. The equipped monster gains 800 attack, and if this face-up card on the field is destroyed by a card effect, you can add a Nordic Relic card from your deck to your hand. because Dropnir was a ring that would duplicate itself, so you get more relics, which can be Dropnir, but you can also get the others. Bit of a flavor whiff on that one, but I'll take the utility. The attack boost is also pretty solid. 800 is no joke. This just feels like a good card. The only thing I wish we had was a way to trigger it on our own terms, but the philosophy that made Metal Foes wouldn't be around for a while. Really, the only thing that's going over my head right now is, is there an interpretation of Dropnir that's gauntlets and not a ring? Gauntlets are a pretty loose interpretation of what a ring is. Like, I guess technically there are parts that go around the fingers, but that's a bit of a stretch. The Nordic Lights is a field spell card that prevents your Nordic monsters on the field from being destroyed by battle. But if this card on the field is destroyed, destroy all Nordic monsters on the field. That's... well, the Nordics aren't supposed to stick around on the field long anyway. We want to use them as material for summons, but then why even bother running this at all then? The upside is that the Aesirs aren't Nordic, so they won't have to deal with the drawback, but yeah, why? Perfectly good waste of a steamed hams reference. Divine Relic Mjolnir is a normal trap card that targets an Aesir monster that you control, and it can make a second attack during each battle phase this turn. Yup, don't give the proactive combat ability to a spell card, make it a trap card that needs a full turn cycle to activate. Heck, don't even make it a Nordic Relic so we can actually search it. I'm just gonna leave this one here, I'm probably not worthy anyway. Gleipnir, the Fetters of Fenrir, is a normal trap card that adds a Nordic monster from your deck to your hand. Would have quite fancied it to be a spell card so we could fetch what we needed sooner than a whole turn cycle, but I suppose if you need to fill space in your deck, a Jar of Greed that ensures you get what you need isn't the worst thing ever. And hey, if you get Fenrir with this, you get a little extra bonus. He'll be so thankful. Go on, do it. I'm sure nothing bad will happen. Nordic Relic Brisingamen is a normal trap card that targets a face-up monster you control and a face-up monster your opponent controls. The attack of the first target becomes equal to the original attack of the second target until the end of this turn. So this generally helps your monster crash with your opponents, but there are some ways to get around that. For the opponent's monster, Brisingamen checks their original attack, so if they get debuffed by anything, you'll end up being stronger. And if the monster you target is in defense position, it doesn't much matter what their attack is, so long as the change helps get over that sideways monster. Heck, you don't even have to go after the monster you targeted. You copy one monster's attack, then use it to bully a weaker one. Brisingamen is an interesting card because it has so many applications that may not be apparent on the surface, but the game isn't really in a place to reward that kind of lateral thinking, at least when using cards like this. But it does still teach us an important lesson. If you meet someone and they're wearing some new ornate jewelry, that person is trying to copy your attack stat and they will try to crash into you, so be warned. Nordic Relic Gungnir is a normal trap card that has you banishing an Aesir or Nordic monster that you control, then you target a card on the field and destroy it. Also, during your second end phase after activation, return the monster banished by this effect to the field in phase of attack position. Hey, that's just straight up removal. You lose a monster, but only temporarily. The biggest issue here is that the monster returns at an end phase, so we won't have time to reinforce it or utilize it for anything else before it's threatened by our opponent's turn. But hey, half these monsters weren't going to survive the winter anyway, so if they can go out chucking a cool spear, I say put them in a tracksuit and let them have it. Nordic Relic Levitain is a normal trap card that targets a face-up monster on the field that destroyed a monster by battle this turn and to destroy it. Also, cards and effects can't be activated in response to this card's activation. For a short period of time, this card was splashed in because of its unique ability to push through interruption that would keep the target safe from harm. You can't chain Forbidden Lance or Dress to Levitain after all. Very old game piece of advice right there. And should push come to shove, you can even crash your own monster into an opponent's willingly. That way they've destroyed a monster by battle, letting them be a valid target for Levitain. It might even trigger your own destroyed by battle trigger too. But it really only is useful after you've lost cards. And if your monster gets removed by an effect, something that's getting more and more common by the day, this just does diddly squat. Not to mention it only destroys monsters that do the monster destroying. So wary opponents could always be sure to send in cannon fodder to clean up, essentially making this a bad trade. Wild thing to say about a legendary sword, I know, but not all legendary swords are created equal. Some of them are imposing and have storied histories and can shatter mountains in a single strike, and some of them are squat little daggers, you know? But hey, that's okay. Nordic Relic Megingjord is a normal trap card that targets an Aesir or Nordic monster that you control, and its attack and defense become double its original attack and defense until the end of the turn, but it can't attack directly this turn. Okay, now this is some combat jewelry. You may not be able to attack directly with it, but hitting a monster in the face with an 8k Odin is going to sting. To say nothing if your opponent attacks into your monster thinking they're safe, when in actuality you were waiting to ambush them with your latest acquisition from Forever 21. Either way, the damage output potential is off the charts, even if it is going for the inferior, less jewels, more metal look. The Golden Apples is a normal trap card that you can activate when you take battle damage and you control no monsters. You gain life points equal to the battle damage you took, and if you do, special summon a Malice token, which is a level 1 Dark Fiend monster whose attack and defense are each equal to the amount of life points you gained by this effect. So as long as a direct attack doesn't kill you, you can recover from it and get a monster of equal strength. Now, this isn't a Nordic card in any sense of the word, but it was used by one of the members of Team Ragnarok in the anime, and the card is steeped in Nordic mythology, so I feel a quick aside here is pretty warranted, even if it is doing a poor man's impression of Gores. Though, now that I think about it, that does a disservice to Golden Apples. At least you can activate it while you control other cards. Honestly, the funniest thing about this card is that you have to make sure you pronounce the token name very distinctly nowadays. Elsewise, you're likely to confuse someone with how you were able to make a token monster for a Dark Cybers theme that only just came out. Nordic Relic Svalin is a continuous trap card, and if you control an Aesir monster, you can negate the effects of all face-up cards your opponent currently controls until the end of the turn. You can also tribute a Nordic monster, then target an Aesir monster in your grave and special summon it. You can only use one effect of this card per turn, and only once per turn. Once again, Modern Legacy support gives us a really standout card, though it too is not without its snags. Remember how Alvis doesn't properly summon your Aesirs? Well, it's now more important to keep that in mind than ever with Svalin, as it can't revive them if they were improperly summoned. But that being said, this other effect is probably better than any of the activated effects of any of the Aesirs, so really any of them can be huge threats now, so long as they're backed up by this cool shield. Though it does kind of take Thor's shtick. Not only does it negate at quick speed, it negates all of our opponent's face-up cards, meaning if your opponent activates a normal spell or trap card, you can chain Svalin, negating all of their face-up cards, catching that spell or trap card in the crossfire. It's great fun. And turning all your other Nordics into Aesir Monster Reborns ain't half bad either. If you're able to make your Aesir of choice without Hlidskjalf's help, this should be Evaldi's Search without a doubt. I've really fallen for it. Odin's Eye is a continuous trap card, and once per turn, during each player's standby phase, you can target an Aesir monster that you control, negate its effects until the end of the turn, and if you do, look at all your opponent's cards in their hand and all set cards that they control, and your opponent can't activate cards or effects in response to this effect's activation. Once again, I'd be upset about having to negate our own boss monster's effects if we had any that were worth caring about. Heck, even if you want to negate spell and trap cards with Loki, remember that it's only during your battle phase, so using this on your opponent's turn doesn't really change anything. That being said though, the knowledge you gain from this isn't really helpful if you can't capitalize on it. Maybe it'll help you ensure when the best time to activate Svalin is, but even then, this is not a Nordic Relic card. You can't search it out, you have to hard draw it, which means it could easily take the place of a card that could actually help you if you committed too many slots to running this. Now, can someone tell me why Odin's Eye is in the hands of this green goblin looking freak? The alternative is that it's one of the Aesirs grabbing it after they haven't washed their hands, which I don't want to think about. Solemn Authority is a continuous trap card that you can activate by targeting an Aesir monster that you control. It can't be targeted by other card effects while this card is on the field, and you send it to the grave during your second standby phase after activation. This is a role that's since been filled by Gulveig, so we probably don't even need to consider running this anymore, if we did at all. Targeting protection is nice, but being attached to a card with its own self-destruct button, and you can't even search it? What's the point of being an archetypal card if you don't get the benefits of only working with one archetype? But let's be real, that's not what you're thinking about right now. This card is far too distracting to really absorb any of what I'm saying here, and how could it not be? Why in the seven hells is Solemn Johnson here? Why is it part of the Nordic lore? Is he representing the Abrahamic god casting aside the Nordic ones? If so, why does the card protect the Aesir? Is Loki responsible for setting the Dark Lord monsters on their path of evil? I have so many questions! Alright, that's all the Nordic cards. But what do we do with them? Well, if it were me, I would focus on getting an Aesir onto the board, Odin probably being the best one, pairing it with Svalin, then smothering our opponent in negates until we've beaten them up or they've given up. So we need all the cards that'll get us an Aesir, Alvis or no, get us Nordic relics, and then help clear the path for Odin to crush the competition before they see what's coming. But what can we play to help them out? First up, we need to reinforce our main game plan. GoldenNovaYugioh is a choke point that's so glaring you can practically see it from space, and it's highly susceptible to many of the most commonly played hand traps in the game at time of recording. Ash Blossom and Impermanence are the first that leap out to me, and keeping the modern environment in mind, even Dominus Impulse is likely to trip us up. So if there's any way to stop these cards from resolving, we should probably be playing them. Called by the Grave can help with Ash Blossom, while Crossout Designator can deal with any hand trap that you happen to be running as well. However, these cards are both limited, for better or worse, so we're going to need something we're likely to see more often. A Forbidden Droplets can get GoldenNovaYugioh off the board should you have targets for it, which will dodge targeted interaction. But if you have the foresight of Odin himself, maybe after an eye resolution or two, consider running Salesman. People have been using this for some time on Master Duel to make some foul setups with Rongo Miniad, but there's a lot more to it than that. If you know a specific hand trap that'll stop you in your tracks, you can turn it off for the turn at the cost of not being able to use it yourself for the rest of the duel. Or, if you know what you're up against, you might even be able to call a card you don't even have in your deck, and not have to deal with the downside. Except your opponent knowing you can never activate it yourself, even if you run it. Honestly, I think this card is criminally underrated. It can get you out of a lot of scrapes. But oftentimes, prevention is better than cure, so it's time to link into the Vrains. This card special summons a monster from your hand, then immediately has you link summoning anything using that monster. And the best part here is that not only can this link summon not be negated, but your opponent can't activate cards or effects during the summon window of that link summon. So you use this to drop a Nordic out of your hand, link it into GoldenNovaYugioh, and then you can banish Alvis, or even 3 cards to do the whole thing properly, safe in the knowledge that there's nothing your opponent can do about it. Speaking of which, being able to set up an Aesir just by banishing Alvis is nice, but the downside of that Aesir being improperly summoned is rather sad. So we'd much prefer to banish 3 off of GoldenNovaYugioh so we can keep our summon integrity intact. And there's one clean method to circumvent how costly this is while getting the full benefit, and that is tokens. Most of the time you can make multiple bodies off of a single effect, but Scapegoat keeps you from special summoning for the rest of the turn, so we can't use that one. Instead, we'll shift to another big animal friend, and trust me, this is not a silly tech pick, it's got some legs on it. Hippo Carnival. Sure, it seems counterintuitive. This time, it's the tokens themselves preventing you from accessing your extra deck while they're on the field, but it's all about sequencing. First, you summon GoldenNovaYugioh as usual, then use its effect. Once you've got it on the chain, you can then activate Hippo Carnival, popping out 3 tokens. This will apply the restriction, but then you can use GoldenNovaYugioh to banish all those tokens and replace them with Nordic monsters, wiping away the restriction and giving you all the cards you need to make an Aesir. And what did that cost you? The GoldenNovaYugioh material and the Hippo Carnival? That's one of the cheapest gods I've ever seen. Foolish Burial Goods feels like a must-include to enable Hlidskjalf's Grave effect and getting Alvis into your hand. So as long as you're running it, you may want to consider adding other spell or trap cards that work well in the graveyard, namely Interrupted Kaiju Slumber. You can banish this from your grave to grab any kaiju, then just have it sit on an opponent's monster that's giving you grief, or just activate the thing to wipe the board clean, and give yourself a ton of non-tuner material. Remember, aside from Hlidskjalf and GoldenNovaYugioh, Nordics don't tend to restrict you in what you can summon. As for a silly tech pick, if you're partial to a bit of recency biasy like I am, then Yugioh the Dawn's Light might be pretty funny here. We don't have any Fiend monsters on theme to pair with its summon from hand effect, but we do have a lot of fairies. Heck, that includes GoldenNovaYugioh and Odin. As long as you don't touch GoldenNovaYugioh or Hlidskjalf, you can link 2 Nordics into a Nightmare or Moon of the Closed Heavens if you've moved past your World Legacy format phase. Then you can summon Yugioh from your hand. Then climb up into any Link 3 that you want. That'll get you Mutiny in the Sky, which lets you shuffle back the Yugioh, the Nightmare, and a Nordic Fairy to make Lucy the Dusk's Dark, which is arguably better protection for our Aesirs than GoldenNovaYugioh is, while letting us pop monsters by dumping fairies or fiends from the deck. And unlike Vanitas, we can actually send away level 4s with this for Gullinbursty to scoop up. And that's all I've got to say about Nordics. Despite a recent wave of legacy support, this theme could still use a lot of work. It's the classic issue of new cards having to support old themes built using old philosophy. And unless we see a massive change in how the theme works, I doubt it will find its way out of this rut. It's certainly not something I relish saying about an iconic theme that tried its best to expand the mythos of the anime and give us some pretty cool ideas. But like the northern realms they hail from, their game plan is pretty much frozen in its tracks. which just makes them all the more enticing for duelists with a passionate, burning heart to bring them out of retirement. And hey, it's hard to blame them. There's something about unplayable jank that just gets the spirits singing. But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Are Nordics washed up on the beaches, or do they yet still have a seat in the great halls of Valhalla? And which one's your favorite? I think Odin's design is pretty clean, but there's something delightfully goofy about Thor's design that I can't quite put my finger on, but I really like. Let me know your favorite down below, and if you haven't already, please be sure to like the video if you liked it, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, check out one of my videos in the sidebar to help me show up in your homepage, and be sure to share this video with somebody you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode is brought to you by Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales that even come with their own lore, and save 5% on your order by using the coupon code GoldenNova at checkout. It was also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commanders, Upstairs Media, and Simic Toadstool, Nebula Navigators, 3rd Dynasty, 50 Gigabytes, Ada Basilisk, Adam Zajdel, Ancient Wizard, Andrew Newman, Battle Axe, Kane Senpai, Charlie Mercury, Chibi Gohan, Christopher Fuss, Clockswork, Comrade Copperbottom, Dr. Reaper, Eric, Frankie, Garland Chaos, Green Knight, Great Big Pillock, Groog, Hairbear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Iron Zero, Iskander 711, Carp, Marion James E. Picata, Meme King, Millennia Asta, Muse Clark, Neon Yaminair, Orozco 09096, Panther J, Bat Boos, Rebel King Lucifer, Red Eyes Jackalow, RJ the Jank Monarch, Sonic 21 Blast, The Critic of Innocence, Thievery Coast, and the Wizard Moose, Cosmic Crusaders Ally Vatnia, Animasta, and Thorak, A Random Pup, Blaze Rider, Blitzwolf, Chaz Ghost, Christopher Fuss, again, Chris B, Cool Trainer Dark, Divine Dragon Felgrin 4123, Dr. Reaper RIP, again, Eki Bullock, Eva Padilla, Herbal D, Inblink, Kale the Dragon, Lobomaru 02, Manga Pages, Martin Moore 2468, Natiel Lee Alexander, Nitromo, Not Al Gore, Nyx, Obsidian, Pombo, Rhyme Kairos, Shizuka Nijimura, Sir Knight JCB, Sphilia, Stephen Huntsman, Stephen Williamson, The Legendary Raven, The Phantom Knights of Shitted Pants, The Queen of Time, The Gene, Tiger X2476, Tristan O'Meara and Zaldreka, as well as the lovely Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, get my videos early, be a part of these credits and other awesome perks, it would mean the world to me if you would check out the link to my Patreon down in the description, or consider joining as a YouTube member. And if you want to learn more about some old 5D's favorites, check out this video where I cover all of Yusei's cards, including the illustrious Stardust Dragon. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.